Hello and welcome. Today we've got Sharon, Lynn, Wyeth, and we'll be discussing names, what they mean, and what people are here for, and what missions they have. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to my Telegram channel and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And I will also leave Sharon's links below as well so that you could contact her, follow her, whatever she wishes. Now, if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave the link below in the description for the full interview due to the censorship, unfortunately. But Sharon, thank you for joining me. And how are you?
Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you, Nicholas. I watched you. You have the most interesting guests on, and you have such a great interview style. It is such a pleasure to join you.
Well, thank you very much. And it's an honor to have you. And I'm very, I can't wait to learn what, the things that you are going to teach today with the names and what they mean. That's something that I'm interested in because, everything happens for a reason, which is synced in to 5D, if you like, with the universe. So, everything has a meaning. So where do we begin with this? I mean, somebody like me that has no idea, which would be great because if you could teach me from scratch, the viewers would know, they probably know more than me about that. So how do we begin?
So where it came from was when I was in my 7th year of teaching, I started writing down the names of the kids for their seating chart. So before they would come in, I would be able to assign them seats. And as I was doing that, my brain was saying, oh, don't put Joshua next to Julie because together they're going to be clowns, but separated, they're going to be okay. And Stephanie's going to be stubborn, put her over on the side. And Derek's going to need extra help, put him up close. And it wasn't until I was doing the seating chart for the 4th class that it dawned on me. I went, wait a minute, this is what I think when I know the students, but all I have is a list of names. So I went back and I wrote down my impression of every student from what my brain was telling me, simply based on their name. And I put it away until winter break because I wanted to get to know the students for who they are. When I got it out, I was amazed at its accuracy. So I thought, okay, my brain has picked up something. How do I make what's unconscious conscious? Now, my brain is thoroughly trained in patterns because I was a math major and I have my master's program and I was teaching math. So I thought, okay, how do I do this? So I started with, there were 8 Davids in my life. So I said, what do they have in common? And I made a chart. What do they have in common? What don't they have in common? Well, it's got to come from the rest of their name. And to make a very long story short, it took me 15 years to figure out all the patterns and all the nuances. And then I was already being invited around the world because I channel, giving talks and readings to people. And so I asked them, could I also come and teach about names for what I was discovering? And so everybody got more excited and they went, how do we get more information? So I came back after 3 years of testing this in over 70 countries. And I started writing the book of the series that literally teach you how to do this. So for an example, people with the first vowel of an I, like what you have, Nicholas, they're the people that family is most important. The good, bad, ugly, fabulous all come from family, but family takes up a lot of their time. They like to be included. And so therefore, they're very good at including other people because they always want to feel included. That's what makes them feel loved. And it even goes down into what kind of gifts do you want? So people with the first vowel of an I literally will have a list and an idea. This is what I want. And so they appreciate it when you say, what do you want for your gift? And they can pick off the list and you don't care about how much it costs. You care that you get exactly what you want. So like, let's say you want a computer, you would say, okay, or a calculator, what size buttons do you want? Do you want it where it has a record of it or not that you can print out? I mean, you would ask all those questions and then get you exactly what you asked for, because that's what a person wants. It has first vowel of an I. Okay. So different letters mean different things. So like the first letter of the first name is the first impression. So like your first letter being an N, plus you've got N's in your last name, which means that you've got an incredible memory and you're very organized. Okay. And anybody can follow your organizational style. And so then the last letter of the first name is your lasting impression on people. And you have an S. So the lasting impression is that you're smart. Okay. And now I'm simplifying everything because there's a lot of things that come with one letter. Okay. So the first name is literally the essence of who you are in this lifetime. The middle name is where you go when you're under stress. And the reason that you go there is because that talks to us about your most immediate past life and what you learned and what you carried forward that maybe you didn't finish. And so that's where you naturally go when you're stressed because you had a whole lifetime of learning how to do things that way. And then the last name literally lets you know who you're bringing to you, who you are attracting. So it lets you know what influences you're coming into your life and who you're listening to. And so the placement of the letters matter. So the first vowel is your communication style, what kind of gifts you like, how you learn. There's so much in the first vowel. It's literally even down to what kind of sex you like. Okay. And then the first letter is the first impression. The last letter is the lasting impression. And the middle letters is what I call those that are more subtle, that you have to get to know the person better and able to see that unless you can interpret the name and you see it all at once. Is that a good overview for you? Does it make sense?
Well, it makes sense. Absolutely. So what would you say then, because most women's names end with an A.
Okay, so names that end in an A and a Y, and if you're on a cruise ship, almost everybody that's a waiter ends in an A and a Y. But that means that those people have really worked on their own personalities and made themselves more likable.
Right. I see. Okay. Can you give us more examples?
Yes. So, well, I look at too, just a second, I'm going to change the lighting here that makes it help a little bit. I look at too is that like a lot of parents will give their kids a nickname. Okay. Like if it's Bob, they give it Bobby. If it's Cynthia, they give it Cindy. They're adding a Y to the name. And what they're doing when they add a Y to the name is they're literally saying, now pleasing me or getting my approval is very important. So become more likable. Try to please me more. Okay. So if we nickname somebody, it's literally saying these are the letters or the qualities or the attributes that we want to see. And so don't show us all of you, show us just these when you're with us. And we would automatically adapt to do that, because those people would be people pleasers.
And everything is energy.
Everything's energy. And when we say a name, we're literally reinforcing that energy so that the person resonates and becomes that energy or morphs into that energy more and more. And the name even says when you're going to focus on what throughout your life. And it gives you the 7 reasons or the subsets of your overall reason and your purpose of why you're here. Mm-hmm. Okay. So like Nicholas, you've been taught to be a detective. It's something you picked up from your last name. So it's something you picked up from the people around you that you want to know people's backgrounds. You want to know what makes them tick. You want to decipher what's really going on in the world. That all comes from the first vowel of an E. And because it sits in your last name, you pick that up from people around you.
Right.
Okay. So, and the same thing also that comes with that first vowel of an E that I always tease people about is they've come to bring more beauty to the planet. So what happens is they walk by a crooked picture on the wall, they straighten it out because it just looks better. And they don't like that crooked picture. It would bother them. Okay. So I always start with the first vowel with somebody because that's our communication style. And in fact, that third book that just talks about the first vowel in a name, because if you just know that, you know how to talk with somebody, you know how to communicate with them, you know how to start a conversation, what kind of gifts to give them, how they learn, what their style is. That is free. It's on every page but the home page, where you can click on a link and get access to that book free, which is called Know the Name, Know How to Connect. And it's on the website, knowthename.com. So that's free for everybody who's listening, if they're interested in learning how to do this for themselves.
Wow. So what would you say for Donald Trump's name?
I love Donald Trump's name. Now, there's always positive and there's always challenges. Okay. But Donald's name starts with D, and D always represents God, religion, ethics, morals. And so if you look at the name Donald, it starts with a D and it ends with a D. And he starts all of his days with 1 hour of prayer. I don't know if everybody knows that, but I look at that and I go, look, it's right there in those D's where he starts with God every day, or his ethics and morals, and he ends that way. Then as we're going through the name, we find that he is a CEO. He loves to be the boss. He loves to tell other people what to do, that money is important to him, that he's a natural nurturer. He wants to take care of the people around him, but he expects loyalty in return. It says that he's very organized. He has a very good memory in his name. He can drive people nuts with the anal retentive to all the details if you really want to have a good conversation with him, according to his name. It also says that he'll work hard to get the job done, but he doesn't want to be at all about work. You have that in your name too. It's not all about work. You've got to have balance. You've got to have some play, and so when he goes golfing, sometimes people will say, well, look, he's not working, but there's got to be balance in a life. Mm-hmm. And so his name indicates that he's good at balance. His name also says that the older he gets, the more self-confident he gets. He's got a combination of challenge in his name that says that if you use it to the positive, that you become a visionary. But if you use it to the negative, that you don't see everything clearly. So that means you may not see people clearly around you. They may shock you at times, okay? Or there may be an illusion that you were taught something or learned something some way, and then you find out in real life that it's different than how you originally were taught it. And so that's one of the challenges in his name. He also has a challenge in his name that when systems don't work, it's one of the 4 combinations that I call the anger combinations or groupings, but it always says why something happens or what sets the person off. And it says when systems don't work, he gets upset. That's what causes his anger or his temper. So I'm sure if people worked with him, they would say, he's got a temper when things are breaking down or they're not working as they're supposed to, that upsets him. He has in his name that he'll always end up on top. Doesn't matter what happens, because you look at the full last name and it's right there for Trump. So he's always going to triumph. He always will. He'll always come back. He'll be like that penny. They always say that penny that rebounds that you can't get rid of. Mm-hmm. It'll always be that way too. He'll always come back. He'll always end up being triumphant. It says he has the power of influence, that he has a good sense of humor, that he can be quite entertaining, that he's going to take entertainment and his sense of humor to the extreme, that he'll push the envelope just to get the laugh. It says that he doesn't like liars, that really bothers him. And even if he has to be polite to somebody, that he won't give a person a second chance if they've lied to him. Once you've lied, you've lied. We're not giving you a second chance. And it says that he'll always rise to the top of the occasion, no matter what it is. So he has a lot of really positive things in there. He also has another challenge in his name that, because it sits in his last name, there's a combination there that says that he will bring liars to him. And you look at what's going on in politics and you look at all the lies that are out there. Does anybody really know this man? I mean, there's so much diversion from both sides that I'm lucky because I can look at the name and say, this is basically a really good guy. Okay. But if you can't look at the name, then you go, wow, I don't know. There's so much on both sides.
Right.
Now, what's really interesting is when I was doing a reading for somebody before Trump came in and before he was elected, somebody asked me about Trump. And I looked at the name and I said, he's basically a very good guy. But my team, that's what I call when I channel, my team comes through and they said, let's look at it this way. If you had roaches in your house, okay, and you hired an exterminator, do you care what that exterminator looks like? Absolutely. Do you care how that exterminator talks? Do you care who he sleeps with? Do you care anything really about the exterminator other than he gets the roaches out of your house? Nicholas, do you care anything about the exterminator?
No, I just want the job done.
You just want the job done. And God hired Trump to get the roaches out of the White House.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right, yeah. But him being honest and brutally honest is a good exercise for people to learn a new way to go beyond what we see, what the eye meets, and really listen to what he is standing for. Because we're so used to you listening and watching leaders who are so very well dressed, very well scripted, and and we just judge the cover, and we think, well, that person's well spoken, that person's well dressed, I'll believe him, he's a good guy. We're so used to that. So it's good that we start looking and doing our own research and looking beyond the personality and how they present themselves, and look more into what they really stand for. That way we do more of the thinking than being manipulated. So it's a good exercise for the humanity that Trump is in that way.
Well, I look at it that even beyond what somebody says, let's look at their astrology, their namology science, which is the study of the names. Let's look at numerology. Let's look at, the face and reading the face. Let's look at other ways. Also, let's look at their actions, because we've always been taught that actions speak louder than words, and let's look at their record. So if you look at some of these people's records that are in office, they have horrible records.
Absolutely.
On what they've done. And it's even more than what they say, because if you look at it, the politicians attempt to move you emotionally and get you to act because of your emotions. And that's away from the logic of what's really happening and what are you thinking about. So if you say, I'm not going to listen, I'm just going to pay attention to what somebody does and what their voting record is or what their track record is, that's going to give you a lot more honest picture of who that person really is. So, and that way too. And if somebody starts talking and they're peaking on the emotions, which is really easy to do, especially if you know how to read a name, then you think they're trying to sway me emotionally, and let's go back. And why don't they want me thinking? And I could get into, I was in 40 years in education, 29 as a teacher and 11 as an administrator. And it's my pet peeve to talk about things like Common Core, what I'll call the CC. I think that is a dumbing down and a controlling program. And I watched how they forced teachers to teach that way. When I refused, they literally had somebody in my classroom every hour to make sure I was doing that.
Right. Please.
I was just going to say, and so we're not teaching our kids to think anymore.
No, we're not.
I would say why?
Absolutely. No, we're not teaching our kids to think anymore. Everything's done for us, like technology. Even, our maths is so bad, in comparison to what it used to be, a few thousand years ago, because we're so used to calculators, or even hundreds of years ago. So how would you account for Barack Obama's name or Barry Soetoro? How would you refine, what does that name tell you about him?
Okay, well, first of all, it's how he presents himself, because it's not his birth name. And your birth name is where your blueprint is for this world. Okay. But in that name, notice that he has an OB combination in Obama. Okay. And the OB combination, it's in his last name. So it's who he brings around him. And the OB stands for narcissistic or narcissism. So he's bringing around him people that really only care about themselves. So you look at how his whole organization worked. It was all about the people that were in it, that they were taken care of versus the rest of us. Okay. And also in his name, there's a combination that says that he wants a lot of alone time, or he's not getting enough alone time. There's not a balance in alone time and people time. And when there's not that balance, you don't get to reset yourself, because people that have that double R in their name need to have their public time, but then they need to have their reflection time. And so if they don't get their reflection time, then they don't do as well. And imagine being in his position as a president, and you don't get your reflection time, then you don't get to balance yourself, and you get off balance, and then you're not thinking clearly. And I think there was an incredible amount of pressure on him. He may have had the best of intentions, because he has a thing called fairness in his name, that he wants to be fair. And yet at the same time, he's got, when he's ending with that Y, okay, with his first name, he's got to please the ones around him. And so he'll change who he is and what he wants and able to keep everybody around him happy. And who is he attracting but a bunch of narcissists? And so I'm sure he was in a great deal of conflict the entire time as he was trying to please the people that put him in office and at the same time do what they wanted. So I think at the end, he ended up doing a tremendous amount of damage because he doesn't have the ability. One of the lessons in that name, one of the 7 parts, is being able to stand up for yourself. And so he doesn't have the ability to stand up for himself. And so therefore, he literally becomes what I would call the puppet.
So do you think that Barack Obama has anger management issues?
It's not in his name. What's in his name is frustration, where he's easily frustrated because he can't get his part across of what he really wants to do versus what the people around him want him to do. And he would succumb because he needs the people around him's approval.
Right.
So I look at it as frustration. If you look at the combination in the name, he doesn't have one of the 4 combinations that says he has a temper.
Right. Interesting.
He does have in his birth name, though, a combination that says that he thinks about sex and pedophiliac. He has that combination in his birth name. So I think that's interesting as more things come to light because that's sitting in the birth name.
So what do you think about Baron Trump? Because Baron is similar to Barry, isn't it? When we say Barry Soetoro. So he's got double R as well. So what do you think about Baron Trump? Because there's a book called, I think there's a book called Baron Trump as well, that was written 100 years ago. And I believe that Baron Trump will play a significant role, maybe in Nasara or in the government much later, in years to come.
Okay.
So, and I think he will be a significant figure in the future. So what do you think about his name?
So he's got fairness issues in his name where he has to learn how to stand up for himself. It's easy for him to stand up for others. Okay. And then he has that double R, which says he needs his reflection time. But I think he'll have a strong enough person because he doesn't end his first name in a Y, that he'll be able to get that time that he needs and able to reflect, especially because he's being taught that now from how he's being reared. Now, I happen to be prejudiced and love that ON combination at the end of Baron because it's also how Sharon ends with that ON, and it's how my birth last name ended with the ON. And that ON combination says that you think logically, deductive, anything that has patterns, anything that goes in a step-by-step process, you're thinking. So computers, mechanics, music, math, engineering, anything that has a step-by-step, you have logic and you have reasoning. And so Baron's going to have logic and reasoning. And when a name ends in an N, like Veniamin, like you got it from people coming in around you, so you naturally pick it up because you also have an N in your first name. I have it at the end of both Sharon and Lynn, and then again at the end of my birth last name. And so what that means is that we can drive other people nuts with the details. We just have these fabulous memories that just include everything. If you have an N in the middle of your name, it says that you have a good memory for things that you're interested in, but the rest, who cares? You're not interested, so I don't have to remember that. But when you have an N at the end of a name, it says you're what I call anal retentive to all the details of everything.
Right.
And that we can give so many details that people's eyes are rolling back in their head going, oh my gosh, stop already. Okay. So Baron Trump is going to have that ON combination, and the N stands at the end of his name. So he's going to have this incredible memory, good logic, thinking, deductive reasoning skills. The first vowel of an A is one of the most observant vowels out there. They don't miss much. They catch about 96% of what's happening around them when other people are happy with lesser numbers because that's what they're used to. Okay. Right. So the first vowel of an A doesn't need as much review to pick things up. Okay. So he's going to have that. Then he has the AR combination, which is fairness, stand up for others, but have a harder time standing up for yourself. The R stands also for discernment and truth. That's where you get they want the truth. Now they're always affected by the letters around them. So you can have a letter around the R that turns it, and then that person literally becomes the liar. Okay. But the double R, they're standing next to pure letters on either side. It says in Baron, the RO combination, is that people will try to take advantage of him. Okay. But what's really nice is with the B at the front, it means, well, my mnemonic device to remember it is bigger, better, best. So it literally means that he's going to push forward and learn how not to let other people take advantage of him. Okay. He'll learn because he's got to be better than that. Okay.
Right.
With that B. And then his last name being Trump, again, the Trump says you're going to bring people to you and you'll always end up being on top. You'll bring people to you that are also on top. You've also got to be careful because you'll bring liars to you. But I think Baron Trump, when I looked at his name and did the whole process on his name, and because you've got to include the parents' names and what that influence is, I think you're right. I think he's going to be absolutely dynamite in what he does, and he'll end up on top and be of great influence.
Absolutely. So is there anything or anywhere where the viewers can go and read or have a look at where they could learn more about this as well?
Well, you can go to the website, knowthename.com, where I said like the third book is free. But the very first book is Know the Name, Know the Person. And that's all about the personality and how do you decipher somebody's personality. It literally teaches it. And, none of us like middle school years, which was grades 6, 7, and 8. Those are hard. And I always say when you're reading the book, skip the middle school chapters, okay? And use those as reference.
Yeah.
My friend said, oh, you should have put it in another book. And I said, well, I've got fairness issues in my name. That's not fair. You got to buy 2 books to learn it instead of 1. And so that's just reference. You can get bogged down in it otherwise. Those are all your 2-letter combinations. But it's in many bookstores, Barnes and Nobles, and you can get it on Amazon. The least expensive place is off my website. If you're overseas and not in the United States, it's on Amazon for Europe and it's in Amazon in Australia. So that you don't have to pay these horrendous shipping costs. And then if you want to know somebody's purpose and why they're here, I wrote another book that's literally called, this one is Know the Name, Know the Spirit. Right. And that's literally shows you how to determine what your overall purpose is and your 7 reasons why you're here, the subsets.
Wow. Well, Sharon, that's amazing. It's wonderful having you on. If you send me the links over, you send me a variety of links, maybe I could leave them below in the description to fit the purpose of viewers who are in different countries that can access this information. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you, Nicholas, for having me on and having me join you. But really, if any system that you use to get to look beyond the surface of how somebody presents themselves, because we've all been trained to do that very well, we've all been what I call socialized, is a system that shortcuts who you bring into your world and who you know and how we can all get along with each other a whole lot better. Because I think our countries aren't going to get along until our states get along and our cities get along and our communities get along, our neighbors get along and our families get along. And so it starts with a one-on-one. How do we see what somebody else's needs are and how they communicate? And how do we be who we are and at the same time speak in a way that doesn't push their buttons because we understand them better, quicker, faster?
Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Sharon. And we'll speak again very soon. God bless you.
Thank you.